Okay, this section is now live, and hopefully everyone from the other one will come through and see this, because I wouldn't have a clue how to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that. Hey Les, I'm going to post this link. See if this link attaches. Click on that link. Because this one's live. No. I've commented underneath that. Just go click if that links. The other one's not going live. The scheduled one. We'll get there. I'm just trying to link this up to my scheduled live because that's not working. No? So I've made a comment underneath there. Yeah, click on that. Connect. Me. Okay. So let's go back and we'll delete that. So then how do I...
Is there not somewhere it says it's a sale?
Well, this one I've set up live. So that one I've set up live. This one here. Yes, no, that's a plugin. There? How do you get there? Yeah, no, how do you get there though? Hi, Sandy. Okay, anyway, I'm starting this. Hopefully it can link through from the other one. Because the live one... Okay, well that one's ended. Okay, anyway, this one started. Okay, so today I will be making biltong. Biltong is a traditional South African food. It's basically a good piece of meat that's dried, and you can keep it for a very, very long time, especially in these times where you can vacuum seal the meat and then put it in the fridge or even put it in the freezer, and it lasts for absolute months. And now being locked at home, I think we can do these type of things to possibly, first thing, upset the Prime Minister of the House, and because of the mess that it makes, and then it's delicious. It's absolutely delicious. So the thing that we'll go through is I've just got to take this band-aid off. I put a drill bit through my arm on the weekend and ended up in hospital yesterday, but it's all fine. So the things you're going to be needing meat, and you're going to be needing spices and salt. Okay, so I'll go through the first things first. The meat that I use is topside, and I generally use just a topside. I actually use Woolworths topside. This is not a paid advert or anything, but I use Woolworths topside because it comes vacuum sealed and it comes with a absorption pad in it, so it actually gets rid of quite a bit of the liquid. But for the past 4 or 5 months now, I've been shown the ways of Wagyu, and funny enough, it's also sold at Woolworths. I think I'm just a creature of habit, and once I find one thing, I'll just stick to that. So The Wagyu that I use is from Woolworths, and it's really, really cheap. And I thought with cheap, you pay for what you get, but it's actually really, really good. And this time I went, and being a bloke, I said to the guy, "Oh, mate, what's the biggest piece you got?" And he says, he brings out a piece of 4.7 kilos, and I didn't want to shy back, and I said, "You know what? I will take that 4.7 kilos." So we will be using 4.7 kilos. Doesn't really matter how much you use as long as you've got space to dry it, which is the main thing. I do have a Biltong box, which I made, and I'll talk you through that type of thing later. So this piece of meat here is, it's the top side. It doesn't come as cleaned up as I generally get it. You need a nice sharp knife, and you want to, I'm a fan of having it, all the fat trimmed off, so you want to get rid of as much of the fat as possible. In South Africa, they generally have a real thick piece of fat which actually runs along this side of the meat over here. So I'm just going to get rid of as much of this as possible, because it will, when I vacuum seal my meat after I use it, and if there's a lot of fat in it, it will squeeze that fat into the meat, and it doesn't end up being so good. So this one's actually not too bad. It's very handy having a nice sharp knife. And the trick to, a lot of people go, "Oh, my knife's not sharp," but it did start off sharp. And if you want a sharp knife, you keep it sharpened every time you use it, and you will always have a sharp knife. But if you have a workshop, like I've got a workshop, then you can sharpen them properly whenever you want. So there's still a bit on this side that I will just get rid of. And while I'm doing this, I will also show you the grain of the meat, because it's very important the way you slice your biltong slices as to how it's going to end up. So I will show you the grain of the meat and how it runs. And basically the grain of the meat is like the grain on a piece of wood. It's all the lines that you see, and we want to, if you have a look there, the grain of the meat runs this way along here. You can see those lines that it runs, and this is the cross section of the Wagyu. So we actually want, so let's go back to the grain of the meat. So you can see the grain of the meat's running this way. I want to cut the pieces like that. So I want to make my initial pieces of biltong that I'm going to hang. I'm going to be cutting it across the grain. And I like, everyone's different with how they like their biltong. I like my biltong quite wet. But if I'm in a rush, I'll cut some a bit thinner, so it's ready much earlier than the other. So what I'm going to do, that's all pretty much, that's enough cleaned up. My daughter's asking me, she's just off camera here, is it supposed to be brown? That's just, it's been aged a bit. So this has been aged in the fridge at Woolworths, and then it's been sitting in our fridge for about 2 or 3 days now. Smells fine. It actually doesn't even have a smell. Generally, on older meat, not off old meat, as in older aged cows, the beef does have quite a strong beefy smell. I just clean my hands as you go, but being in the times that we are, I'd say your hands are all really clean at the moment. So what I'm going to do is the first piece I'm going to cut is probably about as thick as my thumb. Some people might have really thick thumbs. And you want to try, if you've got a really sharp knife, try and get it all in one. Otherwise it starts tearing the meat. So I will come across, and this is quite a substantially thick piece of meat. So it will take a few cuts to get through it. So there's my first piece. Now that is quite large. That will fit in my biltong box, but there are quite a few people that probably have a biltong box that won't fit into. And I'll just put that on the side there and just start cutting some more. So when I changed over to Wagyu, I was a bit worried about how much fat there is in the meat. But after the first batch that I made, when I made it, all the equipment that I used to make it was quite oily, and I was a bit worried that it was going to end up being real fatty and not so good. But I got to tell you, it doesn't actually taste oily, or it doesn't have that oily residue when you're eating it. It's actually it melted like butter. And in all honesty, like even now, I can feel that this board has got quite a bit of oily residue to it, but it doesn't actually transform once you make the biltong. So the pieces, as we're going down the cut of meat, the pieces, the width-wise, are getting thinner. So what I'm doing is I'm actually thickening it as I get to the end of the pieces here. And then what I'll do is the last couple of pieces that I come to, I'll actually just make what the South Africans call stockies, which are they're like snack type pieces. So it's like the leftover pieces. And I'll cut these ones really thin, so they'll be ready a few days before the rest. I do have there we go. So these ones they're really small, really thin. I do have a dehydrator, which I have tried, and I was having people over for dinner the very next day, so I popped some in the dehydrator, and it was literally ready the next morning. But I haven't perfected that yet, because I've used the same mix, the same procedure and everything like that, but it just doesn't come out. It just doesn't come out the same. It comes out with quite a serious vinegar taste to it. All of those mixtures I'll be going through with you shortly. But for now, what I'm now going to do is I'm now going to salt the beef. And the best thing to do when you salt the beef and you put coarse salt in it, it draws out a lot of the liquid that's in the beef. So you want it to not draw the liquid out and sit in its own liquid. So you want to have it raised off a surface. So what I've got is I've just got these cake trays with a little foot on it. So the beef actually sits on here and then it soaks in there. And I got these gastronome containers from a fantastic company called Tonkin Australia. And these sit in there. They sit like that. The liquid drains into the bottom. It's got a lid, and then the second one is a little bit deeper, so this one sits on top, and I can have two sections with it covered on top. So what I'll now do is I'll put them up on the side like this. I'll grab a plate. The coarse salt is just normal rock salt. I haven't tried pink salt. I haven't tried all these fancy salts. I don't know. You can give it a go. It might give it a different taste or anything. What I do though is I do sieve it. I do put it through a sieve to get rid of the small pieces because I'm not a fan of the real salty biltong. So I will sieve it and then I'll just take the real thick pieces. So this has been sieved. So what I'll do is I will take it. I will put that down. Now this is where it tends to get a bit messy because this will fall off the ground. You'll stand on it. It'll hurt your feet if you don't clean it up and that. And the Prime Minister is not happy when I use this stuff, but it is what it is. So what I'll do is I'll just take a piece. I'll pat it down. I'll give it a bit of a pat so it actually sticks into it. And then I will take it and I'll lay it down. Now, don't worry about it. It will lose some pieces as you go along. And we put some pieces on top and we lay it down. So these pieces here, they are quite big. They are actually enormous. I might have to get a different container for some of these because these are really big. What I'm going to do is these really thick ones, I'm actually just going to slice them down the middle so you can actually fit them in. There will be a time a little bit later where I'm going to have to take a break because this sits by itself. It's purely up to you and how salty you want it, how liquidy you want it, or anything like that, or how moist you want the meat. But I generally do it for about just over an hour. I'll let it go. If I can't talk, I can actually do a lot of talking, but if I can't talk sense for an hour, we'll take a break and then come back. Once the salt is ready to come off. Now, what I might have to do, this piece here, I'm going to have to cut like that. So we've got these pieces here. It's not a major issue cutting them smaller. It's just if you've got space to hang stuff, if you've got space to store stuff, you can have them as big or small as you want. What I generally do is once it's all finished and once it's ready to be eaten, I will actually cut them down because, as is most South Africans, once they open up a packet of biltong, they need to finish the whole packet. And the problem is that when you actually eat half a kilo of biltong, that's actually an enormous piece of meat on its own. So just to restrict myself, I will cut them down, and it's just for snack sizes, just to portion control, so I don't go overboard. And let's just do a little bit more. And one more piece. So what I'll do I'll bring it over here. So some of it is salted and the rest isn't. So I'll just take that. I'll just sprinkle it over. As long as you get a good coverage on this, as long as most of the meat's covered, you don't have to cake it. You really don't have to. So there's the one. I'll do this other one here quickly. Okay, now I will put that on top of that. Doesn't have to go in the fridge, as long as it's covered and insects, flies, whatever can get into there. Because at this stage, the flies and that will still go onto it. It's when you put the vinegar mix onto them that they will start shying away. So what I'll do, let me just give this a bit of a clean up. Set the timer. As I said, I'll put it in for an hour. That's generally kind of where I like it. So there we go. That's all done on that side. This can be cleaned up shortly. I'll go through the mixes that we do after this. Now with the mixes, I've done quite a few. I've practiced. I've tried this. I've tried that, and the thing that I have come down to is simple is best. It's just the taste is far more better when you don't overcomplicate things. You guys will see it if you start making yourself. You'll see that simple is best. That's the way I've found it. You know, in the mix that I've got now, there is a bit of chili flake. I thought I'd get clever because my kids eat it all the time. Friends of mine's kids eat it all the time. And when I take it over to friends' houses, the kids end up eating it all. So I thought I'd put in some chili flake just to combat that. But that didn't work. They just polish the stuff off. Australians, South Africans, Kiwis, whatever, they all love it. The only person that doesn't seem to love it is my Prime Minister. But sure. Taya, you want to say hello to everyone?
Hello.
Yeah. So she loves the biltong as well. We actually used the biltong on the kids when they were young for teething. Obviously try to make it with as little salt as possible. And they chewed on it, and they chewed, and it seemed to work. Yeah, give it a go. It might work. It might not work. So what I'm going to go through, I've gone through the salt. Let's go through the mix. So I've got a mix that I've made up already, and I make it in quite big batches because it lasts forever. And basically what it is, it's just the whole coriander seeds that you can buy in Coles or Woolworths in your local store. Whole coriander seeds. I'll pop it on the stove and put it in a fry pan and let it cook for a little while. Now you got to be a bit careful because if it does overcook and burns, it's got a terrible taste, and it's a really strong smell that goes through the house as well. So if you've got an extractor fan, turn that on. Otherwise, it's really going to make a real smell in the house. It's not a bad smell, but if someone doesn't like it, it's a bit noxious. So put it in the pan. You'll hear them start to pop. As soon as you hear one or two crackles, I'd say that's ready. Give it a bit of a stir up so it gets heat all around. Whole peppercorns. Pop some peppercorns in there. Maybe use 10 packets of coriander seeds. Maybe a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of peppercorns. 2 teaspoons of brown sugar. And then I take that and I grind it up. Now, the original one, you can actually see the coriander seeds in it. And I just find once it comes out of the dryer and you start playing around with it, and if you cut it, it gets really messy. And these coriander seeds are just falling all over the place. So the way I've done it is I've made it really fine. So I'll pat it all down, and I just maybe it's just me, but I find that it enhances the flavor because it's ground up better. You guys can do whatever you want. I just find that it works better for me that way, and it is a bit cleaner down the end of the line. So grind it up. Let it cool down before you put it in a sealed container, or else it'll sweat. And that smells. It really gets in there. So this has actually got chili flake in it. So it does have a little bit of a kick to it, but nothing anyone can't handle. It just gives it a different flavor. But I have tried all different things. I've tried paprika, I've tried spices, I've tried everything. And I just find that the simple al natural works the best. It's a great taste, and I keep on coming back to it every time. So, after you do quite a bit of these things, you go, okay, well, let me try something different, and you try something different, and it doesn't really work. So, or it doesn't not to your taste. To a lot of my friends, it all tastes good. Maybe because it's free. I think you people know who I'm talking about. But I probably get a bit pedantic. Some of them I absolutely love it. You come out with a batch that is just absolute melt in your mouth, absolute flavor, and you try and replicate it, and it just doesn't work all the time. But sometimes you do get a good batch. But if you make one batch, the whole batch will taste great. The batch that I've got in the fridge at the moment, that is a really good batch. A good friend of mine, Kev, he made some as well, and he dropped them off the other day for me, and it was fantastic. It's different taste, a little bit drier than I would normally have, but still great flavor. And these guys can have it sitting in their fridges for 2 or 3 months. I had some sitting in my fridge for about 3 months. I don't know why it wasn't eaten, probably because I had so much in the fridge. But it was, and yeah, after 3 months, vacuum sealed, no problem. It wasn't a fancy vacuum sealer. I got it from Aldi, and it's been working for maybe 5 years now, maybe even 6 years, with no issues. It's probably coming down to a new one, but I think they're like 30 or 40 bucks, and they worked really, really well. Anyway, so that's the spice mix. The other mix that we've got is the wet mix. So that's the dry mix. The wet mix is Worcester sauce and brown vinegar. Okay, and it's a simple mix. 400 mils of brown vinegar, 100 mils of Worcester sauce. So I'll make it up, and I have it in a container labeled Biltong. So that is not used in any cooking or baking or anything like that, because the Prime Minister tends to get a bit unhappy if she uses stuff that's not meant to be there. So it is labeled, and that we use as the wet mix. So what I'm going to do is I don't even know if I can pause this thing. Hey, Les. The Prime Minister's not there, but she probably is watching. So I'm not sure if there is a pause button here. So what I might do is I'm going to end this, because this is maybe I'll go through the Biltong box. Hang around. Let me go get one of the Biltong boxes that I have, and I will just show you how that all works. Wait there. Be back now. Huh? Very fair.
Wait, is it still live? And that is how you make it. Looks like it's
Okay. So This is a Biltong box that I made. It's actually a present for a mate of mine. If he's watching, surprise. No, it's not you, Karen. Sorry. So basically, sealed container. On this side over here, I've got 2 holes, 3 holes actually, and they've got mesh on the inside, and it is siliconed up or epoxied up. So that's got mesh. Let the air through. Doesn't let any bugs or anything through. On this side over here, I've got a fan, extractor fan. So it'll draw the air in that, come up and out over here. Just some switches on the side. And what I've actually got is sometimes it doesn't get that warm. So on this Biltong on the front, I've actually got the recipe. Biltong dry spice blend, 2 teaspoons brown sugar, 1 1/4 cups coriander seeds, 1 tablespoon black pepper, 1 kilo rock salt. The wet is 400 brown vinegar and 100 ml Worcester. And I've got 4 kilos topside sliced. So it's as simple as that. As simple as that. So on the inside, what I've got in the bottom is I've got 2 lights, okay, that can be turned on if you want. So what happens is the air comes in at the bottom and the air goes up here through these racks. You see the racks? So the air comes in the bottom, up here and out over there. And there's airflow going all the time. If I find that the Biltong is drying too quickly, I'll turn the lights off because unfortunately these days you can't really get globes that are warm or hot. I did manage to get my hands on a couple of globes, one of the old school globes or a couple of the old school globes, and they do heat up nicely. So during winter or when it's wet, I can actually turn them on and they'll warm up the air quite nicely. But as long as there's airflow going through all the time, then you can cure it as slow or as fast as you want. Now, this one is a bit on the fancier side. I do have other friends that have made their own, something as simple as this. This is I don't use this because the Prime Minister won't be happy, but this is the box that goes in the bottom of the fridge. But you need a lid on top of that. You need some pieces of wire or something to hang your meat over that. You need a hole on the one side, a hole on the other side, and just a fan blowing in here that actually pushes the air. So as long as you've got airflow going through, he's got a bigger one, just one of those $5, $10 ones that you can get at Bunnings or whatever your storage store is. And just the cheap ones, as long as it kind of keeps it sealed and there's a way to flow your air through, that's all you need. The old school guys, they would just have it hanging up in a cupboard. Some people even just have it open. But I just found that I wouldn't be that keen any insects flying around or anything like that. So it's not something you want to be eating off of the flies or anything have been into your meat. Lisa, who's Justin? There's no Justin there. Oh, was he? Okay, Justin Dubov. Justin's the type of guy that would order his Biltong in. He wouldn't generally make it himself, but one never knows. I didn't know that he rode a motorbike, and he does. So anyone can do it. So I'm gonna stop this. I'm gonna come back in about 40 minutes when this is all done, and we will carry on the rest of the process. Okay, catch you guys shortly.